there's a very good chance that you recognize the firearm that I'm holding in my hand. This is the Commando from Call of Duty Black Ops. This is a very famous gun from arguably the best Call of Duty game that ever was made. Today in this video, we're going to go over how I made this, a little bit of the differences between this and the in-game version, as well as the differences between this and its real-life counterpart. So, go ahead, let's get started. The Commando rifle from the Black Ops video game. This is essentially a SBR version of an M16, at least for the game that it was trying to showcase. And this is a Palmetto State Armory upper and lower. We're gonna go ahead and go from the front to the back, and I'm just gonna explain kind of how I did this. At the front, we do have one of the first instances of differences between the game and this gun. In the game, you have a typical A2 flash hider. Here we have a Silencer Co. muzzle brake. This is what enables me to have Silencer Pro because I like having perks when I'm playing multiplayer. Coming back, we have a basic PSA upper that has the ribbed for your pleasure handguard with the flap top Picatinny rail all the way back to the iconic flip up sight that is positioned backwards as it is in the game. This sight is not only on the Commando, but it's on a couple other guns as well. I think the M60 and the G11, that HK space frickin' magic gun that has a clock on the inside of it. We, of course, are running 20-round Colt magazines, which in the game, for some reason, hold 30. But you know what? That just means they're YouTube compliant. Inside, we have a basic standard bolt carrier group with charging handle. Nothing going on too fancy there. We do have SBR lower with a cloned A2, A1, not the A2, A1 hand grip. And then at the back, we have a typical Car 15 stock, just like in the game. And of course, we have the iconic, useless sling wrap that this gun is so known for. After shooting this thing, this is, even if you were to just build out a weapon like this, just for funsies, this is easily one of my favorite firearms in my collection, and I am stoked to have it here to showcase to you guys. So there are a couple differences between the in-game version and this version. Two very specific notices. One is obviously we talked about this before, is the brake. This is like stupid hot because we've been shooting it. But as you can see, we are able to mount a suppressor on the end of this rifle. This has been one of the more fun things to do with this rifle is shoot it suppressed. It is insanely quiet, even though the rounds are supersonic. And one of the other things that I wanted to do with this gun is I wanted to showcase it with dual mags. I always ran it like this in the game. Maybe I sometimes ran it with a red dot, but honestly, I like shooting with irons in the game so much that I ended up just keeping it. And I think it's a little bit more iconic looking at that sight picture as opposed to looking through something else. Now, there are a few differences from this build to the one in the game. Obviously, we do not have a full auto lower. This is still just a standard regular SBR rifle. And the other thing is that sometimes, this is sort of more of a knock on the game, but sometimes, depending on the optic that you put on, your gas block would disappear, which, if you know anything about firearms, renders the gun useless. So that was a little bit of fun. So that was something we couldn't do, unfortunately. We are not going to be clone correct in that aspect, but I think for everything else, we came very close. Now, there is one more thing that I want to discuss and give you guys a little bit of information about this gun before we end up for the day. And it's that this firearm technically never existed. So I'm obviously holding one in my hands, and that's because with a lot of modern parts, you're now able to build this weapon. But back then, during especially the Vietnam and the Cold War era, these parts specifically were not in production, and therefore this gun couldn't have existed back during the Vietnam or the Cold War. More specifically, Picatinny rail didn't come out until the late 80s, early 90s. The A23 style grip didn't come out until the late 80s, early 90s as well. I might be wrong on some of these, but for the most part, you get the gist of it. These weren't around back during the Vietnam and Cold War. The Car-15 stock as well was not around back then, and the Troy battle sights weren't around back then either. So, for all intents and purposes, this gun technically never existed and should not have been in the video game. Now, what should have been in the video game, if the developers wanted to have a carbine-style rifle in the AR platform, they should have used something like a Colt 607, which was the first, I believe the first attempt to make a carbine variant of the M16. So if the developers did figure out that that thing existed, I obviously understand why they didn't want to put it in the game, because it basically looks like a mini M16, and the developers probably wanted something a little bit different. I completely understand why. Being in visual effects, sometimes you gotta make stuff that isn't technically right just so it looks cool. And with this thing, the rule of cool abides.
Fetch me their souls!
You know what? You're gonna be backing up. I'm gonna be walking that way, but shooting that way, okay?
Okay,
Ready?
recording.